Hi everyone, welcome to Manhwa Demon. Please don't forget to subscribe, enjoy the video.
King Bina's Roche stands with an air of authority. His voice echoes to the grand halls of the palace as he says, I, King Bina's Roche of the Durand Kingdom, solemnly decree the dissolution of our marriage. On no salutary occasion, you are hereby stripped of your title as Queen of Durand. As your presence is no longer welcome in this kingdom, you must now return to your home in the capital of the empire. As a last act of kindness, I intend to provide you with an old carriage for the journey. If you beg him in earnest, perhaps His Imperial Majesty will allow you to remain within his palace. Blood is thicker than water, after all. He may be willing to put past differences aside and take you back in. His decision to dissolve the marriage is fueled by a mix of frustration and newfound liberation. I know a Salyard Cajun, the once queen, receives the news with a mix of shock and defiance. Her noble lineage and pride are wounded. Larissa Sti, a lady-in-waiting with a hidden agenda, revels in the unfolding drama, her loyalty shifting towards the ambitious pursuit of becoming the new queen. Larissa Estia is asking the king, "Oh my, does she really intend to travel all the way to the capital in a tiny little carriage? I'm nauseated just thinking about it." Larissa is the daughter of a wealthy Duranian noble and Queen Arnaud's lady-in-waiting. She is allowed the luxury of living in the royal palace as a lady-in-waiting and is widely known as King Binuz's other woman. The king looks at Larissa with affection and calls her name. Larissa. Larissa replies, I understand this is no light-hearted occasion, but I wanted to offer you my support. Nevertheless, as a sign of his everlasting affection, King Binuz presented Lady Larissa with a special gift, a finely wrought silver tiara. Its centerpiece of black diamond is more brilliant than starlight and of a hue deeper than the mysterious depths of the sea. This gem was part of a pair, and the other diamond was embedded into King Binuz's crown. Both diamonds had come into King Binuz's possession as part of Anoa's dowry. Not a soul in the empire could have foreseen this divorce. It seemed unfathomable that Anoa Salyard Cajun, sole imperial princess and bearer of the empire's most illustrious lineage, would be subjected to such a humiliating divorce. Such a pity to think they'd end up divorced. Larissa, does she not hail from far nobler ancestry compared to the king? The king says and agrees of what that's that. She wasn't even worth my time. I should have divorced her sooner. There were different voices chattering in the palace as people whispered in each other's ear, but with her head hanging in shame before His Majesty, she appears the same as any other divorcee. This divorce is an embarrassment to the imperial family. Even if she is allowed to return, I'm sure she'll spend the rest of her days locked away in a tower. It would be more fitting to call Lady Larissa our queen. Upon hearing these voices, the princess looks sad, whereas, on the other hand, Larissa is looking happy. It was no secret that King Binuz did not love his queen, but the prevailing expectation was that divorce would be avoided for the benefit of his kingdom. This was a reasonable conclusion given that Queen Anoa was Emperor Luciano's half-sister and niece of Duke Rickle, who had made a name for himself as a tyrant in the southern regions of the empire. Claiming a woman of such noble pedigree as his queen gave King Binuz a sense of superiority he had not been privileged to feel before as a ruler of a tiny sovereign state. That gave him reason to maintain this loveless marriage for 2 years, but eventually, his heart turned entirely in favor of his mistress Larissa. As Larissa was no longer satisfied playing the role of his mistress, King Binuz decided to crown her as his new queen. Of course, it was not an easy decision. Several factors contributed to why their marriage of 2 years ended in divorce. The first was that he had reason to believe Larissa was pregnant. The second was the queen's sudden change in conduct, which proved to be quite wicked indeed. And the third and final reason which led King Binuz to move forward with proceedings for the divorce was his certainty that the dissolution of their marriage would still leave him in good standing with the emperor. He was assured of this by the emperor's messenger who came to him in the middle of the night, a sorcerer who possessed the cold beauty of a statue. The emperor's messenger came to meet the king and gave him the message of emperor. The emperor will not oppose the divorce between the king and queen of Durand. The esteem in which this kingdom holds the empire has already been demonstrated by your behavior in the past. King thoughts that he's heard Tio discuss the terms of the divorce. Emperor's messenger reveals more information as the dowry offered by the imperial princess is but a trifle compared to the riches stored in the imperial treasury. It would be unwise to ruin diplomatic relations between our two kingdoms over such a trivial matter. The king is shocked, and he in a state of happiness. Does the messenger mean to say I can end it? The emperor will not demand back on Noah's dowry even after the divorce? I can part ways with that woman without suffering any consequences at all. King Binaz, cold and resolute, dismisses the value of his former queen with a mix of disdain and arrogance. His decision to divorce is not only a personal matter but a strategic move to secure favor with the powerful Emperor Luciano. King to princess, standing in the palace. It's time to say farewell. I didn't intend for us to end this way from the start. Perhaps this could have been avoided if you had behaved with a little more rest. If I had known, I might have been able to subdue that damn pride of hers. Just if she had clung to him, begging for his love the night of the wedding and desiring to snub the haughty Princess Bina sought Larissa's chambers. But if our Noah had humbled herself and waited for him, playing the coquette like Larissa always did, the king continued his dialogue, then perhaps I might have given this marriage a chance. Night after night, Binaz abandoned his lawful wife for the embrace of his mistress, but Noah made no attempt to stop him, not even once. The king whispered in the ear of Larissa, who was standing beside him, about the princess, that I'm certain she thought I was beneath her, being a ruler of such a small and powerless kingdom. I see you remain insolent to the very end. I wish never to lay eyes on you again. Go back to where you belong and leave us in peace. Saying this, he throws the divorce on princess. The emotions intensify as the divorce document is thrown onto the princess. Noah, once proud and regal, now stands broken and betrayed. King Binaz, however, remains stoic, convinced of the righteousness of his actions. The twist in the tale comes as Princess Noah, instead of crumbling in despair, surprises everyone with a composed reaction. Her apparent joy and gratitude for the dissolution of the marriage leave the court in shock, questioning her sanity. Princess, addresses the king. So the deed is done. We are divorced. I suppose there is no need to keep up false pretenses any longer. King, Shocking said. Huh? What? Princess lifts her head and said, Since you are not my husband anymore. The king furiously said, What is the meaning of this? Princess calmly replied to the king, We are officially divorced, are we not, king? I see the news must have been quite a shock, for it seems you have lost both your mind and manners. I know not what you mean. I've suffered enough for the past 2 years, and I couldn't be more grateful to you for ending our marriage. People in the palace whispering. Does she fail to grasp what's happened to her? Princess, I've endured you in your court for as long as I could, and you've given me precisely what I wanted. Allow me to thank you for saving me. The king, how dare you speak to me in that manner? Princess, unfortunately it appears you are the one who fails to grasp what is happening. Binaz, king looks very angry as he says, I've never seen her smile like that during our entire marriage. It seems the shock of the divorce has gotten to your head. But may I remind you? Princess made an announcement which left everyone in shock. Belle, come out and deliver the emperor's message to the king of Duran. The palace whispers in confusion as I know its true intentions come to light. I ask, is she insane? There is just no other excuse for her behavior. What in the world is she talking about? The introduction of Belle, the enigmatic sorcerer, adds an extra layer of mystery to the unfolding drama. With skin as white as snow and hair as dark as night, with silver-gray eyes that seemed to penetrate the gaze of any onlooker and a face so beautiful it appeared to be chiseled by the gods. It was the very same sorcerer who Binaz spoke to the previous night. King Binaz was taken aback at the sight of the boy. Upon seeing him, he exclaimed, What is the emperor's messenger doing here? The young messenger, clad in white and black shoes, calmly responded, I came because I was called, swirling in his light brown royal dress. he continued. Although I feel more like an errand boy than a messenger, did you not hear the new Empress call for me? Larissa, visibly stunned, questioned the new Empress. Venus, growing irritated, added, I don't know what you mean. Meanwhile, Anoa, holding a divorce letter, grinning continuously, standing beside him. He revealed, Luciano Occasion is dead. The Imperial Messenger, I am here to announce his passing. Venus, in utter shock, exclaimed, The Emperor is dead. In anger, he shouted, Nonsense! His Imperial Majesty is in fine health, the undisputed tyrant and ruler of the Empire. The young Emperor Luciano Cajun had no heirs. Venus inquired, If what you say is indeed true, then Prince Arian must now be seated on the imperial throne? The messenger replied, No, Prince Arian is also dead, adding, They were both assassinated. Servants were shocked, and whispers filled the air. Venus loudly exclaimed, What foolishness is this? How dare you spout such lies about His Imperial Majesty? I know, insisted, the news of his passing is no lie. The message comes from the Imperial Messenger himself, so it cannot be a falsehood. Venus, deep in thought, pondered, That's impossible, but what will happen if this news is really true? He added, No one could have foreseen such a sudden turn of events. Emperor Luciano was not involved in any known disputes, and he was in excellent health. Furthermore, only a few years had passed since his coronation. He recalled the moment when he, wearing his coat, addressed the servant, saying, I find there is an excessive amount of appointments as of late. The servant bowed and replied, I shall see if any items can be rearranged on the itinerary, Your Majesty. He ordered, We'll discuss this further upon my return. The servant replied, Yes, Your Majesty, I shall be waiting patiently. In his thoughts, he pondered, making the news of his assassination all the more unexpected. He inquired, Then who will inherit? The boy replied, As the emperor had no heirs, the crown will be passed down to whoever is next in line. He explained, According to your nuptial agreement, the husband would have been designated as the successor of any inheritance that was passed down to his wife, not just wealth. Meanwhile, Arona stood twisting her arms and smiling. He added, But any title as well. In other words, you would have been the successor of the imperial throne, Binus. Larissa and Binus were in extreme shock. He asked, But that's... and staggered, falling to the ground. Larissa came to hold him, saying, Your Majesty. The boy continued, If you had just waited one more day, the entire empire would have been yours to claim. However, since you have already acquired a divorce, the imperial throne now belongs to someone else. Binus kept his hand on his mouth and uttered no. While raising his hand, the boy said, Yes, it belongs to none other than Her Imperial Majesty. I know a Sailord Cajun. He turned towards Binus and asked, Do you refuse to bow down to your new Empress? Binus was in utter shock, unable to figure out what was happening. He exclaimed, This can't be. Ainoa started laughing and said, Ha! You heard him, Binus. She added, As your new Empress, I demand you show me the appropriate courtesy. Binus got up and said, I refuse to do so. He clenched his teeth and leaned towards Ainoa, screaming, You, the Empress? That is absurd. Until a moment ago, you were the Queen of Duran. Smiling, Ainoa replied, And according to the Imperial Messenger, I am now the ruler of this empire. Why do you pretend to be ignorant of it, Binus? Irritated and furious, seeing her smiling, Binus said, This is preposterous. Larissa held him, saying, Your Majesty, and flooded her hair and said, You. It matters not whether you bow down to me or not, she added. I expected as much from you, ha! I'm sure you recall that when I married you, I brought with me a carriage full of gold as my dowry. Have it prepared at once, Binus, she asked. He questioned her. What? She added, For I plan to start off on my journey before the day is done, just as you wanted. Seeing her so boldly, Binus started thinking, Have I ever seen such a cold expression on Ainoa's face before? Anoa turned towards him and screamed out, "Binaz, are you deaf? Don't tell me you meant to divorce me and keep my dowry too." Binaz started trembling, clenched his wrist, and said, "No!" He staggered and fell down. Larissa held him, calling, "Your Majesty." Arnold ordered him, saying, "King Binaz, I shall give you 1 hour. Prepare a carriage filled with gold." She added, "If there is not enough gold in the treasury, scrape off the gilding on the soft walls and spires of the palace and pick off the jewels on the scabbards of the royal guards. Wait. If after confiscating the royal throne and crown, there is still room left in the carriage, I shall fill that space by cutting off the hair on your very heads." She leaned towards him and said, "And of course, the pair of my mother's black diamonds on your heads. I must not forget about those." After saying this, he called the Emperor's messenger, saying, "Bell." He replied, "Yes, your Imperial Majesty, your wish is my command." The royal servants started whispering, "What's happening there? What will happen now? What on earth is happening here?" Larissa hugged him and said, "Your Majesty, Binaz, what do we do now?" He didn't reply. She again asked, "Your Majesty." Meanwhile, Belle snatched her crown from her head. Binaz screamed, "Larissa!" She's holding her head, screaming. "Act?" Binaz asked her. "Are you hurt?" Binaz screamed out loudly. "What is the meaning of this? I've had enough of this insolence. How dare you?" Belle held Binaz's collar and snatched his crown from his head. Larissa asked him, "Your Majesty, are you all right?" He said, "You may be a sorcerer, but you are nothing more than a lowly messenger." Binaz sat down, clenched his hand, and said, "King Binaz, you have gone too far." He screamed out, "This is an insult to the kingdom of Duran." Gazing at Binaz, he questioned, "And you have the audacity to talk of insults?" In a fit of anger, he flipped off the crowns, causing them to break and scatter crystals and diamonds. Larissa, witnessing the destruction, gasped, "My tiara!" Black diamonds from the crown fell to the ground swiftly. The messenger gathered the black diamonds in his hands and addressed Larissa. "Your Imperial Majesty." He smirked while swirling the diamonds in his hands. Anoa, observing the scene, was astonished. The messenger approached Anoa, took her hands, and politely stated, "I've retrieved them, just as you desired." Smiling, he handed her the black diamonds and asked, "Does that please you, Anoa?" Filled with gratitude, she responded, "Yes, well done." She touched his face affectionately and declared, "Let us leave this place. I've had enough of their foolishness." Meanwhile, Binaz fell to his knees unconsciously. Larissa tried to support him, pleading, "Come to your senses, Your Majesty." A concerned servant rushed to Binaz and exclaimed, "Your Majesty, are you all right?" Binaz, bewildered, uttered, "I don't understand what on earth is happening." "I know," smiling, announced, "Today has quite possibly been the most wonderful day I have ever experienced." Aino was reminiscing about her past when her brother had trapped her in the tower. In the midnight, the castle was illuminating with lights. Her brother grabbed her hand and said while showing her the castle, "Look before you, Aino." "I was in grief." He added, "Everything you see, this place, the empire belongs to me. And as your ruler, I hold your very life in my hands. Never forget this fear. You'd be wise to suppress any spark of rebellion or ambition within you." He added, "Always remember that your worthless life will be wiped out from existence the minute I let go of your arm." He was her brother Luciano, her half-brother who had locked her away in a tower as soon as the preceding emperor passed away. Then, as soon as she turned 18 years old, she was married off to the king of Duran. She added, looking back, "There was not even a valid reason for the marriage. Binaz, the king of Duran, was more interested in my dowry than in me. After marrying him, she started thinking, but I found comfort in the fact that marrying him at least allowed me to be freed from that tower. I convinced myself that a little infidelity would not shake me. I only had to suffer through his efforts to shame me a few times a week, which I found tolerable. Then Larissa came into her life. However, we were fated to be together. I've never loved another woman in my life. Venus was holding Larissa's hand and saying to her, "Promise me you'll always stay by my side." Larissa replied, "Your Majesty, I'm speechless with happiness." It was their wedding day. Larissa was dressed up in a pink royal dress. All the guests praised them. "They make such a handsome couple that I feel a bit envious. They truly are a winning pair." Meanwhile, Anoa stepped in holding 2 glasses of wine. Everyone got shocked to see her. She said, "Your Majesty, may I take my leave now?" Venus turned towards her and asked, "What are you still doing here?" Larissa reminded him, "Do you not recall, Your Majesty? You asked Her Majesty the Queen to wake with our wine glasses." She hugged him and said, "So that you could have the first dance with me." Venus snuggled her and replied, "Oh yes, I see. My queen has faithfully carried out my request." He scoffed at her and added, "I didn't realize you were so obedient. It's not as if you're some servant. I thought you'd have more dignity than that." Larissa asked, "Venus, whatever shall we do?" Venus replied, "I'm afraid Her Majesty had no idea." She added, "that you wouldn't drink that wine anyway since it's been sitting out for too long. You've always preferred your wine chilled." Larissa, the daughter of Count Sti of Duran, the Queen's chief lady-in-waiting, the King's first love and current mistress, on seeing them together, Anoa started thinking, "I thought it was strange that I was given a lady-in-waiting so soon after my marriage." He just needed an excuse to keep Larissa close by. Anoa placed wine glasses back at the dish and said, "Then I shall return to my chambers as I am not feeling well." Meanwhile, Venus interrupted her by saying, "What a shame, Larissa wanted you to enjoy the festivities with us." Larissa screamed out with excitement, "Yes, we don't mind your presence here at all." She started rushing towards the stage and added, "Please, you'll stay a bit longer." She sat on a chair and asked, "Won't you?" Venus was standing beside her chair. She taunted, "I know it," by saying, "Although you'll have to stay on your feet as there is no seat for you here." Ino left from the wedding running towards her room. She thought, "Are all marriages this horrible? What did we go wrong?" She reminded, "Was it on our wedding night when Venus left for Larissa's chambers as soon as the ladies-in-waiting were dismissed? At that time, when Venus said to her, 'Or was it when I overheard his lies about the night we didn't even spend together? The imperial princess was not so high and mighty standing naked before me.' If I had to evaluate her, she received the lowest marks. She got trembled at that moment. She thought, or perhaps when Venus said, 'Larissa will remain in charge of household matters. If there is anything you need, be sure to get her approval first.' She thought that, and there was also when she stepped on her dress and fell down. Venus scolded her by saying, 'Are you blind? Larissa lost her balance because you stepped on her skirt. Thank heaven she did not fall.' Ino squeezed her dress and thought, 'Venus has always been an imbecile. Despite the challenges, I could bear it all as long as it meant I could escape that tower.' She reminisced about her past when her brother trapped her in the tower. 'My half-brother Luciano despised me since the day I was born. Perhaps that was because he was envious of my mother's noble lineage, which was more powerful than his own.' She added, 'This was understandable as my mother, Anastia, was the matriarch of the Rico family before her marriage to the emperor.' She added, 'Father had always been of delicate health. After his death, I must have become a thorn in Luciano's side. Knowing this, I tried to keep out of his sight, staying with my mother's side of the family. But he dragged me to the palace as soon as he ascended the throne and locked me away in that tower. Yes, I'd rather be there than remain confined in that place. I would have willingly forgiven Venus for his senseless behavior.' She twisted her arms and thought, 'Except when he gave away that tiara and the jewel that adorned it. Those diamonds were a keepsake from my mother. She also received them as a gift from father when they were young.' She added, 'So the value of those precious diamonds was already well known in high society, and of course, they were a part of my dowry. When I first saw Larissa wearing that tiara, I was furious. But after fury came fear. She disclosed her father's intentions, saying, When Count Sti saw his daughter at the king's side wearing the tiara embedded with that famous jewel, he aspired for his daughter to become queen. Since that day, I have been a target of ongoing assassination attempts. She added, aside from being fed poisoned food, I lived under constant threat of attack. I could hardly sleep at night for fear that assassins would break into my chambers through the windows. I could die at any moment, so I lived in terror. Realizing Duran was no better than the tower, everything felt futile. Aino put her hand on her head, took a sigh and said, "How much more can I take? I'm at my wits' end just surviving day to day." While opening the door, she started thinking, what can I possibly do to change any of this? I'll just toss more firewood in the fireplace for now and get a good night's. She saw a white beast in front of her and got astonished. What's this? She thought. Why is there a beast fast asleep in my chambers? Is this the Count's new plan to kill me? She stepped forward thinking. Since the assassin he sent last time got caught, perhaps his new plan is to set a wild beast on me. Still, the beast was sleeping, and suddenly he flicked his eyes. My goodness, I've never seen such an enormous animal, Aino thought. It's rather beautiful. The beast growled, and she got scared. Meanwhile, she slapped her head and realized. What was I thinking? Did the fatigue go to my head? She panicked and started rushing towards the door to escape. This is not the time to gawk. I should go out to the corridor and ask for help. She hurried towards the door in an attempt to escape. As she rushed, panic set in. Meanwhile, the beast awoke and lunged at her. Upon hearing its footsteps, she turned around, visibly terrified. In a matter of seconds, the beast charged at her, causing her to fall, with the creature standing over her. In the grip of fear, Princess Anoa questioned her fate as the leopard held her. How can this be? Am I to die like this? Suddenly, the leopard underwent a mystical transformation, morphing into a human figure. The sorcerer, revealed to be Bel, stood before her and asked her, Is it you? He questioned the princess, bewildered and frightened, could only manage to ask, What on earth is happening? He's a sorcerer, and seeing as he is able to polymorph, he must be a very powerful one at that. What could he possibly be doing here? Sorcerers are known to keep to their own kind in the territory of Perhent. Answer me, are you a Noah Salyard Cajun? Sorcerer demanded. The princess, nodding her head in acknowledgement, awaited an explanation. All right then, on to business. Here, this letter is for you, he said, handing her a letter. Princess, still bewildered, questioned, A letter? Who would dash? As she took the letter from the sorcerer. Sorcerer, I was told he was a friend of yours, could it be? Princess, reading the letter, which says, Tell me whenever you wish to leave Duran. I'll find someone from the academy to put a curse on King Benas. She muttered. Anakin did. Anakin send you here? Sorcerer confirmed. Indeed he did. He was always an arrogant pest, even when we were students at the academy. Keep reading. The princess continued to read Anakin's letter with shock. My dearest friend, Annoy the Emperor and his successor have been assassinated. I've sent you a gift. Knowing you, I'm sure you'll be able to use it wisely. I sincerely wish you the best of luck. Your loyal friend, Anakin. Assassinated? Drat. Princess Aino exclaimed, shocked at the news. Both of them at the same time? But that's impossible. The sorcerer interrupted, stating, That isn't even the real concern. Princess, now contemplating her situation, murmured, If the Emperor and his next in line are both dead, that means I'm the only heir left. However, her thoughts drifted to her marriage vows. I know a Salyard occasion, do hereby solemnly vow to become the Queen of Duran, pledging faithful obedience to my husband, agreeing to transfer all worldly wealth and titles under his name. Realizing the complications, she thought, that I am bound by my marriage vows. The Emperor already had a successor, and I did not expect any title to be bestowed upon me. Regardless, the Emperor and his successor are both dead, which means that imbecile will become the Emperor. Were you and your brother on close terms, although you do look more angry than sad for that to be true? The sorcerer inquired, curious about the princess. My mind is preoccupied with various matters, that is all, he said, sensing the emotions of the princess. As the princess continued to read the letter, she found a line that caught her attention. I've sent you a gift. Is that the only explanation you're giving me, Anakin? So where is it? She questioned. Where is what? The sorcerer responded innocently. My gift, she pressed further. Are you disappointed that I came empty-handed? Perhaps I should have prepared a gift as an offer of my condolences. He teased. I know that is not what I mean. Do you truly have nothing else to give me? She clarified. I know I do not. The sorcerer affirmed. The princess, skeptical of the sorcerer's response, thought, he appears much too composed to have taken the gift for himself. Anakin must have had a reason for sending this letter, a letter and a sorcerer, at any rate, and asked the sorcerer about the circumstances that led him there. I was simply trying to be a good friend. The sorcerer explained. A good friend? According to Anakin, there existed no such thing as a good sorcerer, at least not within the halls of the Academy of Magic. If a non-sorcerer desires something from a sorcerer, he must always pay a price. He replied. I'd rather not delve into specifics. She interrupted. Or perhaps you were challenged to a wager. He turned, looking at her with anger. She smiled and said while holding the letter, It appears I am correct. A sorcerer's wager mandates acceptance if challenged by citing their full name, as ordained by the sorcerer's code. Arnaud emphasized. Winning the wager is no easy task. Sorcerers have lengthy, difficult names, and even if one were able to overcome that obstacle, most people end up losing the wager, paying the price with their life or losing something precious to them. However, Anakin was unlike most people expressing irritation. She stated. No surprises there. Then looked at the letter pondering. But why? Why would Anakin challenge you to a wager? The boy smirked and replied. I can't say for certain myself. Arnaud contemplated Anakin's letter. Said the Emperor was dead, and the role of announcing his passing has always been reserved for the Master of the Enchanted Tower. As the boys smiled at the situation, Arnaud realized and exclaimed, You are the Master of the Enchanted Tower. He confirmed. It appears you truly are as clever as they say. Adding, That is correct. I am here to fulfill my duty as the Imperial Messenger. Now where may I find a fellow named Binus? I must make myself useful to the Empire by delivering the news to him. Arnaud, serious question. Did Anna tell you to come to me before you met Binus? He affirmed. Yes. Placing the letter on the table, she presumed. I presume you decline if I were to seek a favor from you. He responded. Well, of course I would. It is no simple task to persuade a sorcerer to do your bidding. Concerned, she declared. Then I'm afraid I must challenge you to a wager. I'm hearing this, he said. A wager? How will you go about doing that when you don't even know my... He flinched when Arnaud added. Beltrius Dion Asco Repellation per Henerudi. Astonished, he questioned. What? She clarified. That is your name, isn't it? Beltrius Dion Asco Repellation per Henerudi, called Bell for short. Irritated, he turned, saying, Oh, Gannigan, that slide bastard, she insisted. Now you must join me in my wager. I know it, continued. The last thing I want is for Binus to sit on the imperial throne. If I win, Bell stood up from his chair, and she slipped the letter out of her hands, declaring, I shall acquire a divorce and become the Empress myself. The letter dropped on the ground. Princess Anoa, with a fire in her eyes, expressed her grievances. What was my recompense for allowing Luciano to lock me away in that tower, and then consign me to a marriage that was no better than exile? The servants under my command disappeared one by one, having been falsely accused of treason. I was the scapegoat of Luciano's rage and violent temper. Then I was subjected to Binus's mockery, and now my very life is in jeopardy, as Count Sti aims to have me assassinated. Luciano was the cause for all my suffering, and yet the fool died without even a successor. At this rate, Binus will ascend the imperial throne, and I shall become a nameless queen destined for even more humiliation. I must attain the sovereignty for myself. Turning toward Belle, the imperial messenger, she declared with authority, "And you, the imperial messenger, shall acknowledge me as the new Empress, the 28th master of the Enchanted Tower, and ruler of the territory of Prehent in the halls of the palace." Princess Inoa contemplated the mysterious figure before her, Belle, the master of the Enchanted Tower. She recalled the whispers and tales surrounding him. "Belle, the master of the Enchanted Tower," she mused. "I have heard some unverified rumors regarding him before." As the imperial messenger, Belle stood with an air of enigma. His unparalleled magical prowess was inherited from birth as the son of the esteemed sorceress Amaryllis, the 26th master of the Enchanted Tower. Despite his position as an imperial vassal, he remained elusive, much like many sorcerers who tended to live in seclusion, isolating themselves in a territory even the emperor dared not govern. They only emerged from their isolation to fulfill their duty as imperial messengers, honoring a covenant established in ancient times. Princess's mind wandered to the past, remembering a conversation with Anakin. Anakin had shared insights about Belle. "One of my schoolmates is exceptionally talented." Intrigued, Princess inquired. "Oh, do go on." "He's a genius, yet he has no friends due to his horrible temper. He makes wagers with other students, depriving them of their wealth and magical powers, thereby rendering them unable to live as sorcerers any longer." Anakin explained, admiring the bravery of Belle. Shocked, Princess questioned, "What? How can he be allowed to attend the academy after committing such misdeeds?" Anakin continued, "He was expelled, although it's uncertain whether it was due to his notorious behavior. He is said to have returned to Prehend after that, inciting the previous master of the Enchanted Tower into a duel, emerging victorious and claiming the tower for himself." As the pieces of the puzzle came together, Princess, "I know his mind." She couldn't help but feel a mixture of curiosity and caution towards the enigmatic sorcerer standing before her. Belle broke the lingering silence, interrupting the princess in her thoughts. "Your proposal is absurd. Do you even realize what you would be forfeiting if I won the wager?" Belle questioned with a hint of skepticism. "Our wager becomes official once you state what you desire from me, does it not?" Princess responded calmly. Belle observed her demeanor. She appears not to be afraid of me at all. If she has heard anything of my reputation, she should behave with more caution, he thought. "You are after my soul stone," the princess asserted. "Are you truly willing to relinquish it? Pray, do you have any understanding of how it is made?" Belle inquired. "I do. Half of my life will be drained forming a beautiful jewel. It cannot be taken by force and must be given willingly. There exists a tiny bit of magical power in every soul stone, but the most powerful stone is one which is created from the life force of an imperial sorcerer. Sorcerers use these stones as a source of power," explained the princess. "Yes, you are well aware of its purpose and at what cost it is made. However, I am sorry to inform you that I cannot kill the king of Duran so that you may become the empress. The founding emperor of this empire was no fool," Belle clarified, highlighting the limitations imposed by the spell on the imperial messenger. "Your offer is quite tempting, but I cannot accept this wager as it does not offer any possible gains," Belle asserted. "But there is no provision that dictates when the news of the emperor's death must be delivered, is there?" Princess suggested. "While that is true, I prefer to rid myself of this hindrance as soon as I can. If there's longer than a month's delay in delivering the news, the succeeding emperor may hear it from another source, and that would be quite embarrassing for me," Belle explained. "Fine, all that I ask," the princess tapped the table with force, "is for you to delay fulfilling your duty for just 1 month." "Why?" Belle questioned. "So that I may acquire a divorce in the meantime," the princess declared. "Acquire a divorce?" Belle echoed, surprised. "Yes, that is what I wish to wager. Whether or not I am able to obtain a divorce and claim the throne for myself," Princess stated. In other words, you win the wager if you are divorced within the month. Belle summarized. Yes, and if I fail, I shall give you half of my lifespan. If I win, I shall become the new Empress, and all that would be required of you is to fulfill your duty by declaring the news. Therefore, you stand to lose nothing even if you fail, the princess explained confidently. Then this wager has no merit. You dare to challenge the master of the enchanted tower yet seek no compensation? Belle questioned. You need not look so offended. There is merit in this for me as well. In order for the wager to proceed, announcing the news of the emperor's death must be delayed. Not only that, but if you want my soul stone, you will have to prevent any harm from befalling me, no matter how brash my behavior may be, Princess reasoned. It appears you haven't snared me in a rather curious scheme. The wager was just a ploy to gain my support, was it not? Belle concluded, applauding the princess's strategic thinking. The princess merely smiled in response, her plan unfolding before her. The memory of a play orchestrated by the king to mock the princess lingers. Princess Arnia is vividly reminded of the painful spectacle. Mass, how dare you seduce His Majesty? There is only one person who deserves to be by his side, and it's me, Arnia, the princess exclaims, snatching the miss's hair. Nanny, so please your majesty, I shall bear the blame for it all, but please have mercy on my unborn child. She staggers, uttering desperately. The king intervenes sternly. Nanisa, speak no more. Princess Arnia tries to play along, proclaiming her devotion, but the king silences her with a sharp command. Hold your tongue, Arnia. The king dismisses the absurdity of the play. This is ridiculous. Prospects for Duran's artistic pursuits appear bleak indeed. As the princess reflects on the humiliating performance, she recalls the audience's applause and the sinister motives behind it. This play was written to humiliate me, and I have no choice but to applaud. Is this their idea of amusement? The audience's reaction is mixed, with some clapping enthusiastically while others murmur about Count Estia's relentless pursuit to make his daughter a queen. The princess wonders when the public will tire of this farce. Despite the disclaimer that the play is a work of fiction, she can't help but find the actor's name, Rick Tavian, suspiciously familiar. When will the public tire of this ludicrous play? Ahem. This performance was written as a work of fiction, unrelated to any real people or events. Whispers circulate within the audience, discussing the male actor's rising reputation. That male actor has been making quite a name for himself, but of course, he's Rich Tavian after all. There are rumors of Countess Thea's illegitimate son performing in cheap melodramas, fueling speculation about the actor's true identity. The king, reveling in the mockery, acknowledges the actor. I was quite impressed with your acting. Your eyes were very expressive. The performer stammers out his gratitude. Thank you, your majesty. To further humiliate the princess, the king turns to her, smirking. What say you, my queen? Was there any line in the play that you found particularly memorable? Perhaps you'd like to recite one of the queen's lines for us? That would be quite amusing indeed. Ha! As the royal court gathers for the commencement of the play, tension is palpable between Princess Anoa and King Venus, with Larissa observing the unfolding spectacle. Princess Anoa, seizing the opportunity, addresses the king. As you wish, your majesty. If you allow me, would it be all right if I receive some assistance from the star of the play? The king, wearing a smirk, responds, Please do. I must say, it has been ages since you have shown such enthusiasm. Rick, you may step forth. Rick, the star of the play, nervously approaches. It is an honor to make your acquaintance, your majesty, he says with a nod. Princess Anoa, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, instructs Rick to come closer. As he hesitates, she demands even more proximity, causing discomfort. It is true what they say. You truly are the most handsome man in all of Duran. You are just as I imagined you would be, she declares, leaving Rick shivering. Princess Anoa continues her theatrical performance. You carry yourself with such a majestic air that those in your presence cannot help but lower their heads in admiration. None can wear that deep purple hue with more grace than you, your majesty. King Binas trembles with anger as the princess proceeds to place a ring on Rick's finger. This rich purple shade is the symbol of Duran's royalty. It is a color suited only for the bearer of this crown. Rick, now visibly distressed, stammers. This color symbolizes royalty. Only a person of royal lineage may wear purple. The audience begins to murmur. The princess, playing up the charade, slips the ring onto Rick's finger, stating, "You are entirely correct, of course. That is why I wish to present you with this ring, whose elegant color suits you perfectly. Kindly accept it as a heartfelt gift from me, Anoa." She quickly corrects herself with a smirk. Oops. Oh, it was Anya, wasn't it? My apologies. I must now bring this act to a close. King Binas, seething with anger, questions the sanity of the queen. Has the queen lost her mind? Princess Anoa continues talking to Rick. You may keep that sapphire ring as a gift for putting on such a fabulous performance. Rick, startled, attempts to remove the ring. Your Majesty, I will take off this ring right this instant. The audience reacts with shock. Larissa tries to intervene, claiming Rick had no intention of wearing the ring, but King Binas has heard enough. He snatches the ring from Rick, ordering, "Get this scoundrel out of my sight!" Rick pleads for forgiveness, but the king remains firm. Princess Anoa, unfazed, glares back at the angry king. Glare all you want. You would not dare lay a finger on the imperial princess. As the guards escort Rick out while he screams for mercy, King Binas, frustrated, declares, "I shall return to the palace at once." Larissa rushes after him, but the princess, contemplating the unfolding chaos, thinks, what has Larissa Sti gained from being Binas's first love? He mocks others all he likes but cannot stand being mocked in return. How can someone with such a self-centered attitude possibly rule over an entire empire? I managed to wound his pride, but that is hardly enough reason for a divorce. We shall see who prevails in the end. With a smirk, she moves away from the scene, leaving the palace in a state of turmoil. On the next beautiful morning, the sounds of chirping birds surround the palace. The royal trio, King Binas, Princess Anoa, and Larissa, sit at the breakfast table. The king reads a newspaper article praising yesterday's play and the performance of its main lead character named Rick. The newspaper illustrates the exact dialogues of Princess Anoa about the main lead being the most handsome man in Duran, able to wear the color purple with grace, and possessing the majestic air of a king. King Binas, unimpressed, exclaims, "This is absolute drivel," and flaps the newspaper dismissively. Princess Anoa, with a mischievous gleam, pokes the king, asking, "What is the matter, Binas? Were you not the one who wanted me to recite the lines from the play?" The king, clearly irritated, retorts, "As it appears, you have entirely abandoned any sense of propriety. I must remind you that you are a queen, and I expect you to behave accordingly, even if you were raised a naive princess who knows no better." Undeterred, Princess Anoa continues, cutting her steak, smirking, "You need not remind me of my title. I couldn't possibly forget, as Larissa has been relentless in her quest to seize it from me." The king falls silent out of anger, and Larissa intervenes, trying to ease the tension. "Your Majesty, Her Majesty the Queen seems a bit irritable today. Let us not concern ourselves with her and continue enjoying our meal. Here, would you like a taste? This is my favorite." Larissa lifts a piece of meat from her plate. King Binas, touched by her gesture, responds warmly, "You are as kind as you are beautiful, Larissa. I shall let you have the first taste." Larissa takes a bite and expresses her enjoyment. "It's delicious, Your Majesty." Princess Anoa, observing the exchange with a glance, decides to take her leave, saying, "Ha, I shall take my leave now." As she departs, King Binas and Larissa share a moment appreciating the delightful meal. The atmosphere lightens, and the king exclaims, "I'm certain it's delicious." They continue to enjoy their breakfast, seemingly unaffected by the earlier tension. In the quiet recesses of Princess Anoa's memories, a pointed conversation between her and her mother resurfaces. Princess Anoa's mother imparts wisdom. Remember, in order to win a servant's loyalty, you must only give one your undivided attention. A young and curious Princess Anoa inquires. Pardon me? Her mother, sensing the innocence in her daughter, asks, Are you all grown up, Princess? No. Princess Anoa hesitates before responding. I know. The mother continues her guidance. Then are you wealthy, just like your father or uncle or even myself? Princess Anoa, understanding her modest circumstances, replies, No, I'm not wealthy either. The mother leans in, sharing a profound truth with her daughter. I shall tell you something very important, so I want you to listen closely. Wherever you go, seek just one person who has the greatest potential to be your aide. The young princess, absorbing this advice, seeks clarification. Just one person? Her mother nods, emphasizing the significance. Yes, choose the smartest of the bunch, the smartest, and give that person all of your trust and affection so that they would even risk their life for you if you so desired. Tenderly, she pats Princess Anoa's head, leaving an indelible impression. In a quiet moment at the royal table, Princess Anoa and Belle engage in conversation. Princess Anoa reflects. Mother was absolutely right. Belle inquires. And your choice was Dr. Lutz? Princess elaborates on her decision. Correct. In a foreign kingdom with so many enemies, what one person could prove most useful to me? They would need to be able to detect any poison in my food, protect me from illness, and at times even aid me in keeping my enemies in check. In other words, a physician. She wasn't the court physician, but an apprentice. Dr. Lutz stood out from the rest. She came from a family of scant means with many mouths to feed, and most importantly, she was a genius. Sorcerer Belle probes further. But is she truly poor? Royal physicians are paid handsomely, are they not? Princess clarifies. Not in the case of apprentices. In addition, her mother fell victim to an incurable disease, and Dr. Lutz was in desperate need of money for her treatment. The conversation shifts to a memory of Princess Anoa discussing plans with Dr. Lutz. Princess expresses gratitude. You have been an indispensable help, Dr. Lutz. Dr. Lutz replies, It was no trouble at all, Your Majesty. I'd do anything to please you. Princess discusses the contraceptive medicine. The contraceptive medicine you concocted worked wonderfully on Larissa. You may stop administering it to her now. Dr. Lutz questions, Is it no longer a concern whether she becomes pregnant? Princess reveals her true intentions. Actually, I need her to show symptoms which indicate pregnancy. Dr. Lutz asks about the timeline. How soon do you require her to have such symptoms? Princess sets the deadline. I need her to be diagnosed in 3 weeks' time. Are you up to the challenge? She punctuates her request with a smile. Dr. Lutz confidently responds, Of course, I'll get started on mixing the ingredients right away. Sorcerer Belle acknowledges. Quite competent indeed. Princess concludes the discussion about Dr. Lutz. As I told you, Dr. Lutz is a genius. I would not be alive to converse with you like this had it not been for her help. I'm sure Larissa is at a loss as to how I managed to survive all of her attempts to poison me. In a flashback, Larissa frustratedly questions her helper. Is this the best you can do? You told me she ingested the poison without a doubt. Why is she still alive? In the midst of their conversation, Belle drops an unexpected revelation. No, not the physician, you, Princess. Taking aback, exclaims. Me? See aghast, Belle, maintaining an air of mystery, states. I must step outside momentarily. With a swift movement, he springs up. Princess, puzzled, questions. But where are you going? Belle, already in motion, leaps away. Princess is left with bewilderment. Mothers, he just comes and goes whenever he pleases, as if he was some kind of alley cat in a mysterious jungle setting. Belle engages in an unusual conversation with an animal. You were moving at a snail's pace. Did I not tell you to carry out your tasks promptly? Surprisingly, the animal transforms into a human, revealing Luca. Unfazed, Belle states, Luca, with theatrical flair, exclaims, "You are too cruel! Do you really intend to nag me after all the time we've been apart? Are you not glad to see me, Belle?" Pragmatic as ever, Belle replies, "It has only been 2 days since I last saw you, Luca." Dramatically, Luca sighs, "Well, it was the longest 2 days of my life." Ha! Cutting through the banter, Belle demands, "Enough with all this chatter. What do you have to report?" Back on track, Luca says, "Oh, right. I am. There was a letter from Perhent this time. A boy from the Lopin family is showing the signs." Belle acknowledges, "Yes, I also heard that on the way here. What else?" With a mischievous grin, Luca adds, "Oh, if you wish to hear some news regarding the Queen of Durand during your absence, she drove an entire theatrical company to ruin." Surprised, Belle questions, "Did she truly manage that in the span of just 2 days?" Luca nods. "Yes, she is quite a terror, contrary to her appearance." Unfazed, Belle inquires, "Have you captured it in the artifact?" Luca promptly presents the artifact. "I have it right here, although it is a bit blurry. I'm sure you're already aware, but Anakin always claims the entire stock every time new artifacts become available." Belle examines the artifact and comments, "Wasn't she amazing?" I witnessed the whole ordeal hidden just off the stage. The Queen knew exactly the effect her words would have. It appeared to be all part of her plan. Luca agrees. She certainly is competent." As Belle hands back the artifact, Luca adds, "She desires to become the new Empress, eh? She is better suited for the position than that fool Luciano, Master Belchirius." Belle responds, "Yes." Alarmed, Luca points at the palace. "I'm afraid I just saw." A tense moment unfolds as Luca reveals a band of assassins headed for the palace. Unaware of the unfolding danger, Princess greets Belle. "Oh, Belle, you're back." Suddenly, chaos ensues. The scene is filled with the sounds of whooshing, thudding, and splashing. The assassins tries to kill the Empress, but Belle enters and saves her. He said to her, "It appears the palace guards are remiss in their duty. Where have they all gone?" The assassins moves toward him and attacking him shouts, "Die." While fighting with assassins, he said, "Yes, I expected as much." Judging by the sudden appearance of dagger-wielding assassins, and how they leapt 3 stories without a moment's hesitation, I was right. The guards were instructed to abandon their posts. Seeing this, all Empress said, "Their relentlessness never ceased to amaze me. I am the Queen of Durand. Is this the treatment I deserve?" Belle comes to her and holding her hand, he said, "You are hurt." She, seeing her injured hand, replied, "It's nothing. I'll just have the wound cleaned and have Dr. Lutz take a look at it in the morning." He grabbed her hand and then said her to hold still. He starts healing her wound with magic. She asked to him, "Do you also possess the power to heal?" He replied while healing her wound, "Only as much as needed in the present." He continues, "Is this Count Astia's doing? To make his daughter a queen?" She nods her head. Belle, holding his chin, said, "Would it not be simpler to have the king killed?" She, with a nervous face, said, "What?" Belle, in a cold tone, said, "It's true. Is it not King Binas is what stands in your way? All of your troubles will be solved if he ends up dead like Luciano and Arian." He inquires, "Have you not attempted to because I refused to do it for you?" She replied, "No." Belle said, "With Dr. Lutz's help surely you could." She interrupts saying, "That's not it." Belle said, "It can't be Bacchius, he's your husband." She replied, "The reason I not do it is because Binas has a nephew who is his successor." Belle gets confused and said, "A nephew?" She nodded her head and replied, "Yes." She explains the situation to Belle, saying, "Meaning if he dies before the divorce, I will be nothing more than a widowed queen." It would be a sight to see to have that unruly brat seated on the imperial throne. She, holding her head, said, "What a headache that would be." Belle said, "Then have that 10-year-old taken care of first." She said, "You are forbidden from inflicting any sort of harm on Dr. Ludes, or his nephew, unless I give you the word. If you kill anyone without my permission, I will consider it an act of sabotaging our wager, and you can forget about receiving a soul stone from me." Belle replied, "Yes, we had a wager. It completely slipped my mind." "That's," she said. "We shall proceed on my terms." Belle, with a sigh, said, "Fine. But I also have a request." She inquires, "What is it?" Belle, show her a golden stone, she said. "That is a mystic eye, isn't it? Why are you giving that to me?" Belle replied, "It's the only artifact that allows a particular enchantment to be cast on it. That gem is part of a pair. When one gem is worn, it allows the person who dons it to witness the actions of the person wearing its counterpart." He, giving that to her, said, "Always wear it around your neck." She, with a nervous face holding the stone, said, "Thanks you." Someone moving towards her room shouts, "Why, Your Majesty? Is everything all right?" She gets confused and nervous. Belle said, "I see the palace guards are finally coming to your rescue." She asked him, "Quick, you must morph into another form." Belle said, "What? Wait," she said. "Hurry." The guards enters and shouts, "Your Majesty, we have come to save you." Meanwhile, she was standing there alone. She turns back with a cold look while standing in front of dead bodies. She said, "Is something the matter?" One of guards said, "She's still alive?" While others, seeing him alive, gets nervous and surprised. He said to her, "We discovered traces of an intruder. I'm relieved to see that you are safe." She, with a cold look, said, "I'm all right, even though you have all failed to protect me." The guards said, "Please forgive us." While one of them noticed something and, holding his sword, he shouts, "A trespasser!" Empress shouts, Wait, that's..." Meanwhile, a cat enters and, seeing it, everyone gets shocked. One of the guards said, "Oh." While seeing the bell in cat's form, he said, "What's a cat doing here?" Meanwhile, in the next scene, we saw a camp. A man holding another man shouts, "Ah, Roxanne," while a redhead girl was standing in front of them. The man places his knife on neck of other man. He begs for his life, saying, "Please spare me my life. I beg you." "Captain," the man said to redhead girl, "the request made by Kessman is not a substantial one by any means. In addition, I have no desire to kill your betrothed. I beseech you to reconsider the terms of our peace agreement. This is a meaningless war, and we want to cease." Meanwhile, she pull out her arrows, and the man, seeing this, shouts, Wait. What are you doing?" She, with a cold look, moves her arrow towards them. The man shouts, "What is the meaning of this? Do you intend to kill your own intended?" Her betrothed shouts, "Put that down. Do you mean to kill me? Roxanne, please. Have you forgotten that I'm your intent?" Meanwhile, she kill him with her arrow. Seeing this, the man gets shocked and said, "She killed him with her own hands." She, with a cold tone, said, "Kill them all." In the next scene, we saw a palace with red flags. A man grabbing a glass of juice said, "How foolish of them. Did they really think we would accept a peace agreement?" He was the Grand Duke Aselier, Roxanne's father. Roxanne said, "Those dimwits from Kessman didn't know what hit them, father." She grabs the glass of wine. Her father said, "Were you hurt?" She replied, "Of course not. But..." She sighed and said to her father, "Please pick someone better as my intended next time, father." Listening this, her father gets confused. Her father starts laughing and said, "I will keep that in mind, but right now," she in a cold tone said to her father, "we have a more important objective to discuss." "All right, then what happened with the assassination of Emperor Luciano?" Her father with a nervous face replied, "Actually, that is precisely what I'd like to speak with you about. There was a setback. Luciano died as we had planned. But that imbecile Aryan died as well. I didn't expect the bot to be such a ravenous simpleton that he's eat poisoned food." She gets furious and said, "What do you mean Aryan died?" Her father said, "Unfortunately, it's true. Our plan to make Aryan a figurehead failed." She clenched her hand. She furiously shouts, "How could you be so careless? You should have prevented him from dying. Was it that hard to keep the dullest member of the family alive?" Her father sighed and replied, "Worry not, my daughter. Our plan isn't over yet, for this is just a trivial setback. This merely means we'll have a different nitwit sitting in the throne." She turns and said, "So the crown goes to King of Duran." Her father explains, "Yes. For the imperial princess Arnoa gave up all PF her rights 2 years ago. SHW will become nothing more than his wife and Empress. This is nothing to be concerned about. Unlike you, she is a weak, ordinary girl." She steps forward to mirror and said, "Imperial Princess Arnoa. What was she like? Was she really just a weak, ordinary girl like my father says? No. She was more like..." Her father taps her shoulder and said, "Do not forget. You are my daughter, my flesh and blood. You're the most capable person in the empire, and the future empress." He said, "So what if you don't come from a royal family? The Aslier family's lineage surpasses that of the imperial family's direct descendants by far." Her father said, "I was not able to sit on the throne. But I will make sure you do." She said, "The master of the enchanted tower should deliver the news to the king of Duran in a few days." Her father replied, "Yes. Maybe he has already been notified." She said, "He does not have a slightest idea in how heavy the emperor's crown is." She, placing her hand on mirror, said, "I shall let that halfwit from Duran know his place. I will make him understand the difference between a king and an emperor, and who truly wields power within the empire." Changing scenes, we saw a garden full of flowers. 3 girls having tea sits there. One of them said, "Is that true, Dana? I can't believe Her Majesty was so infatuated with Rictavian she even gave him the very ring symbolic of the royal family of Duran." She giggles and said, "That's hard to believe. She didn't strike me as the type to do such a thing." Meanwhile, the other girl wearing a yellow dress said, "I am telling the truth. I didn't know she was even capable of smiling. I am certain Rictavian won her heart." Larissa, with a smile on her face, said, "What an embarrassing scandal. It seems that Her Majesty still doesn't know how to conduct herself in Duran. As ladies in waiting, we must teach Her Majesty how to." Meanwhile, someone opens the door. Larissa turns and said, "Who dares to enter my greenhouse unannounced?" Empress enters wearing a purple dress and said, "I see you're enjoying tea time in my absence." The girl in yellow dress stands and bows, saying, "Your Majesty." Larissa, with an evil smile, said, "Oh, Your Majesty. It's considered rude to barge in unannounced, and on your own, no less." Empress said, "I was invited, and the door was closed. What other choice did I have?" Larissa replied, "Well, you could have had a servant open the door for you. After all, we didn't want Mother to get upset again." The Empress replied, "I intended to, but all my servants were having a tea party." Hearing this, the girls get shocked. Empress in her thoughts said. The way she uses the same tricks repeatedly is just like her father. Count Estia, Larissa's father, tearlessly produced the same play over and over again, and attempted the same assassinations repeatedly without ever growing weary. Larissa held tea parties with similar schemes each time as well. She would invite Arnoe as if she were concerned about Arnoe feeling lonely. Then she'd insult Arnoe for hours, put strange things in her food, and laugh at her after gifting her gaudy outfits. Larissa, with a smile on her face, said, "Your Majesty, where is the dress I gifted you? I chose it with great care. Was it not to your liking? Just like she is doing right now." Empress replied. "No, it was an eyesore." Larissa said. "How could you say such harsh words? Are you implying that you have a problem with my taste?" Empress replied. "Implying? No, I'm telling you have terrible taste. Take a look at your hideous dress, for instance." Larissa gets shocked and said, "You excuse me?" Empress said, "Let's see what rubbish you have served today. This is rather fun." Empress taps the cup and said to her servants, "Isn't it a servant's duty to pour tea?" Her servant leaned and said, "Forgive my impertinence, Your Majesty. Perhaps this fragrance will lighten your mood." While seeing the tea changing its color, Empress thoughts. It changed color. She must have coated the cup with something. She sips tea and gets shocked. She said in her thoughts, "It's spicy." One servant asked her, "Is the tea to your liking?" While the other said, "It has a sweet aftertaste." The first one said, "It's an excellent tea." Empress sighed and said, "It tastes awful. Perhaps my sense of taste is a bit off." Larissa said, "I'm afraid you're right. Your lack of taste for finer things worries me, Your Majesty." She snickered and said, "You must know how to enjoy the finer things if you want to win the heart of His Majesty. I'm touched that my precious lady-in-waiting is looking out for me. What kind of queen would I be if I didn't reward such behavior?" She grabs Larissa's face and said to her, "Drink. This is a reward for my chief lady-in-waiting." She pours the tea forcefully in her mouth. Larissa starts coughing. Cough. She starts sweating and shouts, It's spicy. It's burning my tongue." She shouts, "Water! I need water!" Meanwhile, Empress pours tea in cup. Larissa snatched cup from her hand, saying, "Give me that." She starts drinking that without seeing what it was. She suddenly gets shocked. Breaking the cup, she shouts, "Arg! This is the same tea." Empress, with a smile on her face, said, "What's the matter, Larissa? I thought you enjoyed finer things." A lady enters shouting, "What is this commotion about?" Larissa starts crying and dashes towards the lady and shouts, "Mother!" Her mother replied, "Larissa, my dear." Meanwhile, Empress in her thoughts said, "I was wondering when Countess Estia would arrive." Larissa said, "Sob, mother." Her mother asked her, "Who did this to you?" She replied, "Her Majesty did." Larissa's mother furiously said, "What is the meaning of this?" Empress replied, "Is it not obvious?" Meanwhile, and she said in her thoughts, "I'm glad she's here." Empress said to Larissa's mother, "She served me some wonderful tea, so I rewarded her accordingly." In her thoughts she said, "She will help me make my point." Larissa's mother scoffed and said, "Forcing her to drink against her will hardly seems like a reward. It's downright barbaric." Larissa's mother asked Empress, "I expected more from a member of the imperial family. You must be punished for your actions." She said to Empress, "Show me the back of your hand." Empress in her thoughts said, "This family sure loves to repeat themselves." and move her hands towards her. Empress in her thoughts said. But this time, Larissa's mother, trying to hit Empress, said, "Hold steady." Seeing this, Larissa gets happy and laugh. Empress, pulling her hand back, said, "I will not play along," which caused Larissa's mother to hit herself. She shouts with pain. "Arg!" Empress, laughing, said, "Are you all right? Perhaps you could try a gentler swing next time." Larissa's mother trembled and said, "You can't pull your hand back when you're getting punished." Her mother said, "You've really learned nothing in the past 2 years, have you?" Empress replied. "You're right." Her mother asked. Pardon me?" Empress said. "Like you said, I have learned absolutely nothing from you. Oh, but I do remember one thing. You told me that the Queen is in charge of the royal staff, and that I can hire or let go of anyone I want." Listening this, Larissa's mother gets shocked. She turns and shouts, "That's enough from you. I shall return to the palace and inform His Majesty of what happened this instant." Empress replied, "There's no need for that. You are relieved of your duties, Countess." Larissa's mother shouts, "Oh, what grounds?" Empress said. "Your incompetence is reason enough. Considering the amount of gold you're paid, you should have done a better job of teaching me." Larissa's mother said, "It's your fault you didn't learn a thing from me." Empress spun her hairs and said, "You have failed me. Your indifference made me the barbaric person I am today. Is it not a teacher's job to lead student on the right path? Before I show myself out, here's another act of barbarism." She Aegean pours the tea on Larissa's head and said, "Larissa, thank you for the lovely tea party." Larissa starts shouting, "Eek! Mother! I need water!" Meanwhile, seeing this, the servants said, "My poor darling! She seems like a different person. Maybe she has gone mad." Meanwhile, Empress starts laughing and said, "That felt great." She noticed a red rose, she picked it, and smelled it. Meanwhile, Belle, seeing this from a near place, starts laughing. "Wahaha!" Luca said to him. "Show some self-control, Master Belcherius. Is it that funny?" We're in the middle of the palace. Belle was sitting on a tree and holding his golden stone. He said, "It's okay. We're invisible." Luca replied, "My stealth magic has its limits. Why make me cast it? It's not completely soundproof." Belle said to Luca, "Do you want me to stop training you?" Luca replied, "No, master." Luca grumbled and said, "What could be so funny about a tea party?" Belle replied, "You missed all the fun parts." Luca replied, "Only because you didn't let me watch it with you." Belle said to Luca, "Focus on your training. She is a delight to watch. How has she been hiding her true nature all this time?" Luca turns and said, "Is she not hiding her true nature anymore?" Belle said, "No, she's being herself." Luca pondered and said, "Honesty rarely pays off for non-sorcerers. It usually gets them killed." Belle, holding his golden stone necklace, said, "Only those who are thoughtlessly transparent meet a dreadful end. But her intentions are clear." Luca said, "But isn't it bad for you if she's the meticulous type?" Suddenly Belle remembers something and gets shocked. Luca said, "I thought you had a wager with her for Soul Stone." Luca reminds him about the wager, saying, "I thought the two of you had a wager. You should keep her from getting divorced if you want her Soul Stone." Belle gets nervous and clenches his golden necklace. He said, "Luca." Belle flicked his finger, causing Luca to float, and said, "When did you become so talkative? It's unattractive." Luca said, "Oh, why did you do that?" Luca fell down and said, "You scoundrel! Anyway." Belle said. I'll keep watching her and the future she paves for herself. Meanwhile, in the palace, Larissa starts crying while lying on her bed. King Binas, sitting beside her, said, Stop crying, Larissa. She, with tears on her face, said, Does it not make you angry, your majesty? The queen made a fool out of me. Binas, in furious look, shouts, Of course I'm furious. Larissa sniffled and said to King Binas, Then why are you still keeping her in the palace? Is your love for me fading? King Binas replied, Of course not. He hugs her and said, I told you, you're my first and last love. But it's difficult to divorce a member of the imperial family. He raised his hand and said, Such hardship. Fate has never been kind to us. Larissa said, God must be jealous of our love. King Binas replied, We must stay strong. She, with tears on her face, said, So are you going to let this go unpunished? King Binas gets shocked and replied, I will do no such thing. He holds her hairs and said, I will make her pay for making you cry. She will learn her lesson at the upcoming Festival of Souls and realize that to wrong you is to wrong me. Binas smirked and said, Get ready for the spectacle of the century. Changing scenes, we saw two ladies laughing while seeing Empress dress. One of them said, Look at the queen's dress. It looks like it was in fashion a century ago. I heard it was bestowed by His Majesty himself, not Larissa. His Majesty must be quite angry. Empress thought, So you've heard about the tea party incident. Gossip all you want. Meanwhile, someone said, The first song has come to an end. A round of applause for the most beautiful couple. King Binas said to Larissa, You and I are a match made in heaven. We even dance well together. She replied, It's because you taught me so well. Meanwhile, Empress Arnoa comes and bowing said, Your Majesty. They turned towards her. King Binas said, The dress suits you. It truly captures the solemnity of a queen. What a thick and heavy fabric. It's as if my great-aunt has come back to life. Larissa said, Those fake purple pearls are a good look on you, Your Majesty. Meanwhile, Empress in her thoughts said, I couldn't care less for their meager insults. I wonder if you're watching me right now. Belle. 2 days before the festival. A cat walks in Empress' room while she was trying the dress. She noticed him and said, Belle? Belle transforms into his original form and said, I told you should never remove the necklace. I need you to wear it at all times if I am to protect you until the end of our wanger. Empress replied, Did you come all the way here just to tell me that? I took it off so I could change in front of a mirror. Belle said to her, Did you even look in the mirror? Because that dress is ghastly. She replied, It's my outfit for the Festival of Souls. Binas gave it to me saying that he wants me to dress the way his great-aunt who died 100 years ago did. Belle, noticing her gown, said, Must you wear that abomination? Have you no other gowns? She replied, I appreciate your concern, but it's a fitting dress for the Mad Queen. And I wish to put people off. You, Belle said, keep saying you're mad, but you're not. She replied while Belle steps forward to her. Pardon me? Is it so crazy to say that an actor beloved by the whole nation is handsome? When the king parades his mistress around the court? Is it so crazy to punish a lady-in-waiting for insulting her queen? I don't think it insane at all to discharge that sadistic teacher of yours. She clenched her hand and said, Common sense has no place in. Belle interrupts her saying, You should be enraged. It's only natural to have done what you did. There's no need to call yourself mad. She flicked and said, I thought sorcerers were heartless. She, turning back, said, I see your point. I will no longer call myself mad, for I am not. Belle said. The festival tonight, is it not? Does one have to be a noble to be invited? She replied. Yes. One must hold a title or be related to someone who does. Belle said. If that's the case, that invitation is of no use to me. He points his finger towards the red rose and said, I'll have that instead. Empress gets confused and said, You want me to give you this rose? If you wish to have one, there are plenty of them in the garden. Belle said to her. There are, but I want the one you've picked. She sighed and replied, You're rather juvenile. She gave him the rose and said, This one is withered. Belle, smelling the rose, said, To me, it is more beautiful than any other flower. Bina said, I'm afraid you're a tad bit late. I have already picked my partner. Arnoa said, I do not need a partner. Binas interrupts saying, But worry not, I have found you another. Why don't you greet him first? You'll be dancing with him all night, after all. Binas's distant relative Marquis Robert Dine. Arnoa said. Marquis Dine. While the guest starts whispering, Isn't he that awful scoundrel who uses dirty tricks to get any woman he sets his sights on into his bed? Marquis Bowen said, It's an honor to be your partner, your majesty. Arnoa turns her head and said, At least someone is happy about this arrangement. Could it be that your majesty has 2 left feet? Perhaps that is why the king prefers the tender company of Larissa. Marquis said, Allow me to soften up your stiff body. He said, Even the most frigid shrew couldn't turn down a real man like me. He grabs Arnoa from her back and said, Not even you, your majesty. He, trying to kiss her, said, Let us dance. Meanwhile, Arnoa hits her neck and he shouts, Huh! Arg! Arnoa said, It's quite simple to overpower someone with their guard down. You dio'd have to be a real man to do that. She grabs him from her hair, said, My apologies. I'm the one who is playing the palace troublemaker these days, not you. She stomped his feet with her heel. He shouts, Argh. Bina said, What do you think you are doing to my guest? Arnoa with a smile said, The Marquis acted impertinently first. Bina said, He was merely jesting. Why must you overreact like that? You really have lost your mind. She spins her head and said, Why don't you punish me then? Binas furiously said, I'm not to be trifled with. You think you can belittle me just because you are from the imperial family? He, looking towards the servants up there holding dirty water, said, Let's see how long you can keep up that attitude. Servants said, Quickly pour it on her before she walks away. Arnoa in her thoughts said, I can't believe he planned such a childish prank. She clenched her hand and said, Fine, I will use this to my advantage. Meanwhile, servants splashed the dirty water. Arnoa said, It will be easier to act crazy when I'm wet. Meanwhile, Belle enters and saves her from water by giving her a raincoat. Seeing him, Arnoa said, Belle? Bina, seeing Belle, asked, Who are you? How dare you? You lay a land on the queen. Belle replied, What do you mean? I merely saved my partner from a rather difficult situation. Bina starts trembling and Belle said, As this is a joyous occasion, please demonstrate your great generosity and grace, your majesty. He grabs her hand and said, My queen, I am sorry I am late. Belle kissed her hand and said, Allow me to escort you, your majesty. Arnoa, seeing him, gets shocked and said, How did you? Belle, giving red rose to Arnoa, said, This is for you? As Arnoa touched the rose, its color starts changing, she said. The color of the rose is. Suddenly her cloths changed and Rose turns blue. Guest seeing this gets shocked and asked. The queen's gown changed. What is happening? It was red velvet until seconds ago. She looked so much better now. Arnoa whispers to Belle. Are you crazy? Belle whispers back, do you not like it? Arnoa said. I'm not talking about the gown. You can't use magic out in the open. He replied, I didn't, that's just an artifact magic. Arnoa said, it all looks the same to people. We should leave immediately. Meanwhile, Belle grabs her and said, I told you that I would escort you. Arnoa said, Yes, you did, but it's time to run. They come outside and Arnoa asked her, Why did you help me? Belle, removing his mask, said, Because you asked for the protection. Arnoa turns and said, I don't need you to protect me from getting splashed with dirty water. She turns back towards him and said, It would have made my mad queen act more persuasive. She holding the rose said, Belle, did you help me to sabotage my plan to obtain a divorce? Belle replied, If that's how it seemed, you are free to believe so. He, spinning her hair, said, I suppose it fits your character. Nonetheless, you are the only one who protects me around here. She said, Thank you. In the next scene we saw Binus. He said, She's gone mad. Utterly mad, I tell you. He asked the servant, You there? Tell me your thoughts. What did you think of the queen yesterday? He replied, She was beautiful, your majesty. Binus said, You buffoon! I couldn't care less about how she looked. I'm talking about her behavior. How could she let herself be escorted by another man right in front of me? The servant replied, But Marquis Dine did so by your order. Binus gets angry and said, Not him. I meant the man in the mask. The servant replied, That handsome man. Binus gets furious and shouts, He's no doubt ugly under his mask. Binus said, Did you find out which estate he is from? The servant said, Yes, your majesty. He is Count Lurk of Lurk Estate. Binus said, That can't be right. I know Count Lurk. I used to attend lessons with him in the palace when I was young. The servant said, I'm afraid Count Lurk's estate and title were purchased by someone yesterday. Binus said, Who could possibly buy the fourth largest estate in Duran? He clenched his hand and said, I'm sure the queen is behind all this. It's all her doing, I am certain of it. The servant said, Why would she do that? Binus, holding his chin, said, Jealousy? She is trying to get me to become jealous. She must be looking for other ways to get to me now that she can't harass Larissa anymore. Do you remember Rictavian? It is obvious she was using him to make me jealous. It all makes sense now. Pathetic woman. Meanwhile, a servant enters and shouts, Your Majesty, a carrier pigeon just arrived from Kesman. Do you remember deploying our soldiers to aid in the war between the Imperial Army and Kesman? Binus gets shocked and said, Of course. It was the Emperor's order. The letter says Grand Duke Aselier is forming a special force made of our Duranian soldiers. The special force of Grand Duke Aselier. They were established by the Grand Duke himself. Acting as Commander-in-Chief, the Grand Duke uses them to eliminate anyone who gets in his way. And when their service is no longer needed, they're sent to the front lines to die. Binus said, Did the Emperor order this himself? The servant replied, I cannot say for sure. Binus asked, Could this be about the Queen? The servant replied, It is a possibility. Why else would the Grand Duke threaten Duran like this? Even though they're not on good terms, she is the sister of the Emperor. It might bother His Imperial Majesty that she is still not blessed with the love of your Majesty after 2 years of marriage. Damn, that leaves only one option. Changing scenes, we saw Binus getting ready. He said, I suppose I'll have to save the day. Tell the ladies in waiting to get her ready, Arnoa said to her servant who was brushing her hairs. What exactly are you doing? She replied. Isn't it fragrant? Rose perfumed oil does wonders for your hair. Laddie Larissa puts this on every day, Arnoa said. That is not what I asked. Why are you doing all this to me? Servant replied. I told you. It's the king's order. Let me spray you with this perfume Lady Larissa uses. It's His Majesty's favorite, Arnoa said to her. If you get a single drop of that on me, I will have your hand cut off. The servant bows and said, I'll take my leave now, Your Majesty. Arnoa in her thoughts said, Isn't it enough that he's making me put on all this makeup? Why must he make me go along with his preferences? What game is he playing at? Meanwhile Binaz knocked the door and said, My queen? He enters holding a rose in his mouth, said, The preparations took quite some time, I see. She seeing him get shocked and said, Eek. What are you doing in my chambers? And why are you not dressed? She closed her eyes and said, It's repulsive, I mean it is inappropriate. So this was what he was up to. Binaz said, Tonight, I shall give you what you've been longing for. Arnoa gets shocked and asked, What are you talking about? Binaz replied, You didn't have to harass Larissa and put on a display with another man at the ball to ask for my love. She gets chilled and said, Wait, are you offering? Binaz blinked his eye and said, Correct. You may have my body. Arnoa said, I do not want it. Binaz said, Let's make an air while we're at what? You need not play coy anymore. You have my permission to indulge in your lust for me. Arnoa said, Get away from me. Meanwhile Belle and Cat Form enters and started attacking Binaz. Meow. Arg. UTGH. What is this cat doing here? How dare you scratch me? Arnoa leaned and held the cat and said, Ow. Stop, Snowy. Come here. Arnoa said to Binaz. Listen carefully, Your Majesty. If you ever try smelling like this again, you might end up like Marquis Dine. Binaz said, Are you saying you will break my foot? She with a smile said, Perhaps your foot will be broken, or perhaps your tool for siring in air. Try me if you're curious. Binaz gets nervous and run away saying, Why, you're a mad woman. The cat said, Meow. Arnoa holding him said, Turn back to human form. No one will come here for a while. It's fine. Meow. Belle transformed back to his original body and hugged accidentally. She said, Oops, sorry about that. Belle said to her, This is why I told you to let me go first. Belle hugs her and said, This is why I told you to let me go first. Did you not hear me a moment ago? She thought. A moment ago? Was he trying to say something when he was meowing? She steps back and said, Anyway, why did you do that? Belle replied, What do you mean? She said, You attacked Binaz. I thought, as the messenger of the Empire, you are not allowed to harm or kill the next emperor. Belle whistled and replied, It's okay to scratch him with claws. He waves his hand and said, As long as I don't harm him with magic. She replied, But why? You were supposed to keep me from getting a divorce. She said, Don't you want my soul stone? Belle, folding his hands, replied, Didn't you hear that the master of the enchanted tower is capricious? I'm famous for doing whatever I want. As fickle as the wind. He continues, Just now I felt like giving the king a good scratch, so I did. If somehow there were not a contract of magic between the sorcerers and the imperial family, I would have killed him right then and there. Changing scenes, we saw a raccoon dashing from arrows. King Binaz getting furious shouts, That little vermin! Meanwhile his servants said, That was a great shot, your majesty. Even the best archers have a hard time hitting a nimble creature like that. It's true. Rakonos are even trickier to hunt than bears or boars. Maybe it's time to find another game. Meanwhile a servant said, Oh no. Was it another shot and missed, your majesty? Why did you have to go after that raccoon when there were other, easier targets? You are already out of arrows. Would you like me to give you the raccoon I caught? King Binaz gets furious and grab him from his cloths. Binaz said in anger. Silence. Shut your mouth. Other servant trying to save him from Binaz said to Binaz, Have mercy, your majesty. He is new and has a lot to learn about manners. Binaz in his thoughts said, That darn cat, the raccoon, and now even this little brat. They're all mocking me. As if I wasn't already frustrated trying to comfort Larissa, who burst into tears. Binaz asked to Larissa while she was crying lying on bed. It's not like that, she replied. You have betrayed me. King Binaz in his thoughts continued. After hearing that I went to Arnoa's chambers. Arnoa. He recalls the moment when he goes to Arnoa's chamber. She said to Binaz, Listen carefully, your majesty. If you ever try something like this again, you might end up like Marquis Dine. She in a cold look said, Perhaps your foot will be broken, or perhaps your tool for siring in air. Try me if you are curious. Binaz thoughts. Did she mean it? I wanted to have an heir with imperial lineage. Hold on, speaking of hires. Why is Larissa not getting pregnant? He gets nervous and said, Am I at fault? That can't be. I am the great king of Duran. Meanwhile, a raccoon snatched something from him. He gets shocked and tremble. He said, Why you? He shouts, You damned raccoon! His servants said, Why, your majesty? Changing scenes, we saw Arnoa standing there with a bow and arrows, smiling while holding her chin. Larissa comes and asks Arnoa, Is this your first hunt, your majesty? She, wearing a red dress, said, His majesty brings me along quite often. Arnoa in her thoughts said, Here we go again. Arnoa said to her, I have been to hunts at the Imperial Palace and Duke Rickle's manor. Larissa asked her, Have you ever shot an arrow? She tells to Arnoa, I learned how to use a bow from His Majesty. She glares and said, Before your majesty even came to Duran. Arnoa in her thoughts said, Foolish girl. No matter how much you brag about how close you are to Binaz, you won't get a rise out of me. Perhaps it rubbed you the wrong way that Binaz came to my chambers. But I won't let you step all over me. Arnoa replied to Larissa, You should find another teacher if you're serious about learning archery. She shouts, Are you mocking him? His Majesty is the finest warrior of Duran. Arnoa replied, Duran is doomed if its finest warrior is unable to take down a mere raccoon. Larissa leaned and said, Your Majesty must be a master archer to be making fun of His Majesty. If you are so good with bows, would you have a competition with me? Larissa said, By the way, I once won against the Royal Guard. Meanwhile in her thoughts she said, How good could Arnoa be at archery? She smirked and Arnoa said, It is an interesting suggestion. But what would we shoot at? There are no targets. Larissa replied, We are on a hunting ground, are we not? Let us compete with how much we catch today. Meanwhile the guard interrupts saying, It's almost time to retire. Larissa with a funny face said, Oh, would you look at the time? It's too late for you to start hunting. I followed the knights and shoot a rabbit a minute ago, but your majesty was busy taking a long break at the camp. Arnoa steps forwards and said, I didn't know shooting a rabbit that was caught in a trap someone else set up counted as hunting. Arnoa in a cold tone said. I heard a knight had to help you because you couldn't even finish killing it. You also ruined its skin, didn't you? Larissa gets furious and said. What? Of it? That's still more than you. She said. If your majesty is so confident, hunt something bigger than a rabbit. I will approve of your majesty's archery skills, if you manage to hit an animal with an arrow at least once. Arnoa replied. Your approval means nothing to me unless you're going to apologize for your rude behavior the last time. Larissa starts trembling and said, Ha! Did your majesty say, apologize? She thoughts in her mind, why would I apologize to a powerless queen? There's no way she can shoot better than me. She's been stuck in the palace for the last 2 years. Larissa said, Fine. But if I win, you do the same, your majesty. I want you to apologize for what you did to me and my mother. Arnoa with a smile holding her chin said, Hit an animal bigger than a rabbit once, huh? Don't you think it's a dumb wager? Larissa gets shocked and said, Pardon me? Arnoa explains. Bigger animals are harder to kill with just one shot, but landing an arrow on them should be much easier compared to small critters. Larissa leaned towards her and shouts. Just go to the forest and start shooting, your majesty. King Binus comes and interrupts them saying, How about postponing the competition until the hunt next month? It's getting dark. Larissa with an evil smile said, Worry not, sir. Her majesty is brave enough to go into the forest by herself. She countenance mocking her saying, Or is it? Too frightening, your majesty? Give up if you would like. It would not be the first time you lost to me. Meanwhile Arnoa pulls out the arrow and said, I don't need to go into the forest. Larissa said. Excuse me? Arnoa flipped the arrow. She in a cold tone said, There's no need to waste everyone's time when there is an animal bigger than a rabbit right in front of me. Larissa gets shocked and said, Hold on, what are you doing? Arnoa replied, What does it look like? I'm hunting. She pulls the arrow and pointed towards Larissa and said, What does it look like? I'm hunting. Larissa gets shocked and shout, Why you wouldn't? His Majesty will punish you if anything happens to me. Arnoa said, Really? Larissa smirks and thought, even she wouldn't outright defy the king. Arnoa in cold tone replied, I'm curious how he will punish me. Meanwhile Larissa gets hit by a stone and fell down. And said, Wait, your majesty. Arnoa said, I'm no knight. I have no means to protect myself. I cannot hunt alone in the forest. Arnoa in cold tone countered her words saying, But lucky for me, there's a beast right in front of me. Larissa in her mind thoughts, she is mad. She will hurt me just like she did at the tea party. The guards get confused and said, Please your majesty, this just has gone too far. Arnoa giving cold look said, Silence. Larissa starts crying. Arnoa holding the arrow said, I'm releasing the string. Larissa gets scared and holding her hair shouts, Aha. Arnoa shoots the arrow and it hits something at back. Larissa gets confused and said, Huh? What was that? The arrow hits Boar and kill him. The guard starts murmuring and one of them said, What in the world? Larissa was seeing that sitting on ground. Arnoa flipped her bow back and said to Larissa, Boars are bigger than rabbits, yes? Seeing this Larissa gets confused and shocked. She turns back to Arnoa and replied, Do you have any idea what you've just done? Unbelievable. Arnoa smiled and replied, I believe. I've just won. She grabs Larissa from her face. Arnoa in a cold tone said, Which means you owe me an apology. Larissa gets shocked and starts sweating and trembling. Saying With tears in her eyes she said, I'm sorry, your majesty. Arnoa interrupts and asks her to stand and said, Lady Larissa. After their return to Palace, Binus comes in Larissa's room and shouts, Larissa! Who did this to you? Larissa, sitting on her bed, replied, Your Majesty. Binaz holds her arms and asked, The Queen. What did she do? While Larissa was crying. Larissa holds him and replied, She threatened to shoot me with an arrow. Binaz replied, What? Is that true? Larissa said, And on top of that, she laughed at me after I fell. Binaz, holding her, gets furious and said, That foul woman. Binaz, in his thoughts, said, She's didn't cause any trouble the last 2 years. What was gotten into her recently? The doctor interrupts and said, Binaz asked her, Out with it. Is there something wrong with her? She, writing something on paper, replied, Not exactly, Your Majesty. She asked to Larissa, Lady Larissa, may I ask when the date of your last menstrual cycle was? Larissa replied, It's actually about 2 weeks late now, but why do you ask? The doctor asked, Have you experienced any recent physical irregularities? Larissa, holding her head, replied, I feel some nausea and dizziness, to be quite honest. The doctor shocked them, saying, Congratulations, Your Majesty. Lady Larissa is pregnant. They both gets happy and Binaz asked, What? Is that true? Is she really carrying my child? The doctor replied, Yes, absolute stability must be secured. Larissa got so happy and hugged Binaz. She said, Did you hear that, Your Majesty? I'm pregnant with a child of Duranian blood. Binaz, in his thoughts, said, That means there is nothing wrong with my body. Larissa starts crying and said, I'm so very happy. Binaz asked her, What's wrong? Larissa said, It's terrifying to think that I nearly lost our child because of the Queen. Binaz gets furious and said in his thoughts, She almost killed my baby. How dare she insult my appearance, threaten to hurt my family jewels, and try to harm this hard-earned child of mine. Binaz squeezed Larissa's shoulder and said, She crossed the line. I must have her punished. Binaz went to Arnoa's room. He enters her room and shouts, Arnoa. He, pointing towards Arnoa, said, I'm aware of all your malicious acts. You have taken advantage of my generosity for long enough. He said to his guards, Lock her up in a room immediately and do not let her out. The guards grabbed Arnoa and said, Yes, Your Majesty. Binaz said, No one is to see her until I give my permission. He points his finger towards her and said while laughing madly, Do not bring her a single meal or a sip of water. When she is on the verge of dying of hunger, she will have to beg me for mercy. The guards lock her in a room. The guards said to Binaz, The door is locked, Your Majesty. He replied, Good. He turns towards the maid and said, Keep an eye on her and report anything she says. The maid replied, Yes, Your Majesty. Binaz, in his thoughts, said, I can already see her begging me to sapper her after she's reduced to skin and bones. Meanwhile, Arnoa, sitting beside the door, waits for them to leave. After they leave, Arnoa said, He's gone. She tries to open the door and said, The door is locked. He must be planning to strafe me. She writhed and said, Well, I'm not going to let him get his way easily. She starts to write something and said, First things first. Then she removed the necklace Belle gave her and asked her to not remove. In the next scene, we are Arnoa eating a bread. She split the bread and dipped it in a soup, and then Arnoa eat it. She flicked her fingers and said, All I asked for was just a little piece of bread. There was a lot of food, including grilled chicken, in front of her. She, with a smile on her face, said, You didn't have to prepare a whole feast. Then we saw Belle having lunch with her. Belle slices a piece of steak and then gives to Arnoa. He said, I can't have you starved to death. Arnoa, in her thoughts, said, I did blackmail him, saying my soul stone would shrivel if I strave. Belle said to her, I even brought desserts. She gets the fork from his hand and said, I can eat by myself. But isn't this a tad bit too much? Belle, folding his arms, stand beside her and said, I hear that women like desserts more than main dishes. Arnoa eats that piece of steak and said, Are you interested in what women like? Belle gives a smile and said, I am now. While eating, Arnoa said, One might say I'm pregnant one. Even Larissa wouldn't be eating this much. Belle said, I thought her pregnancy is fake. Arnoa explains him, It is. It's Dr. Lutz's handiwork. Belle said, I didn't know she could even do that. Arnoa, holding a knife, replied, she's quite capable. Arnoa explains, from the disrupted menstrual cycle to the slight nausea and occasional fatigue. All I wanted was for her to lie that Larissa is pregnant. Arnoa, with a smile on her face, said, I didn't know she'd even make Larissa have the symptoms of a pregnancy. Thanks to her, Binas will now have something that'll justify our divorce. Belle steps away and said, right, the door of this room will stay locked for some time, yes? Arnoa replied, it will. Belle opens the window and said, good. He won't be discovered then. Arnoa asked, he? Belle said, I'm expecting a guest. It doesn't concern you. Arnoa replied, how will that guest visit you when the door is locked? Belle said, he climbs quite well. Arnoa said, what do you mean he climbs? Suddenly she gets astonished and said, wait, that's... Seeing Luca in raccoon form, she said, a raccoon? Arnoa rose from her chair and said, I remember him. She loves the raccoon and said, he's the raccoon from the hunting ground. Is he your student? Belle said to Luca, that's enough. Report. Luca transformed in his original body and said, hi, your majesty. Luca shouts, wow. It's nice to see you in person. Belle hits on Luca's head and said, I believe you have news to deliver. Luca shouts, ow. Luca said, I did hear a few things from Kesman. Arnoa suddenly asked, Kesman? That's the nation. She glares and said, at the northernmost end of the continent, where Grand Duke Aslier and his daughter are engaging in war. Arnoa asked Belle, why did you bring me news about Kesman? Belle huged a pillow and said, I thought you wanted to know about it. Belle said, you said the war must have something to do with the assassination. Arnoa thoughts, I'm surprised he remembered that. She leans towards Luca and asked, is the war coming to an end? Luca explains, nope, it's still very much ongoing. But it's not because Kesman is putting up a good fight. Arnoa, with a concerned voice, said, the Grand Duke is dragging out the war, huh? Luca said, how did you know that? Arnoa explains, it doesn't take a genius to know that the war is necessary to continue the flow of funds from the Empire to the Grand Duke. Things in the Empire are actually even messier than in Duran. Just look at how the Grand Duke killed off Luciano despite him supplying everything the Grand Duke asked for. Arnoa squinted and asked, is there anything else? Luca replied, I heard that the Grand Duke formed a special force recently. She gets shocked hearing about Special Force and asked, a special force? Why so suddenly? Luca explains, the members of the special forces are practically sentenced to death. That's where the Grand Duke sends people he doesn't like to punish them. Arnoa asked Luca, who are the members of the special force? Luca replied, let's see. They are from all sorts of backgrounds and they never did anything to anger the Grand Duke. But they all have one thing in common. Arnoa asked, what's that? Arnoa gets shocked when Luca said, all 20 men are from Duran. Arnoa said, he must have heard about Arian's death. It's likely that the Grand Duke's plan was to kill Luciano and keep Arian alive. But now that he learned Arian is dead, he must be trying to break the spirit of Daihan's king, who is the next in line to the throne. Luca shrugged and said, and that was 10 days ago. She said, are they already? Luca said, oh yes. The special forces all died on a dangerous mission a few days ago. The Kesmanians must be furious with the Empire to put their heads on spikes and put them on display. Kesman did the Grand Duke a favor by delivering a warning to Binas. Belle asked, why go through all that trouble? The Grand Duke could have killed the soldiers himself. Arnoa replied, that would have made him responsible for their deaths. This is one of the simplest power play strategies. The problem is Binas might be too stupid to understand even a simple warning like that. Actually didn't understand it and tried to bed Arnoa wearing a robe. Arnoa said, perhaps. She smiled and said, this might work in my favor. Belle hugs the pillow and also smiled. In the next scene, we saw Binas slam his hand on table. Binas in anger shouts, what did you just say? He said, ugh, that spiteful woman. How is she still not apologizing? It's been 3 days already. He trembles with anger, and the servant stands silent in front of him. The servant said Her Majesty didn't make any sound at all, so I had a maid ask how she was doing. The maid said, Your Majesty? Arnoa replied, Totally fine. What? And all Her Majesty said was, I am fine. She even sounded more vigorous than 3 days ago. Binaz, listening to this, slammed his hand on table. Binaz puts his hand on her head and said, Is she a witch or something? How can she remain haughty when she was locked away without food and water for 3 days? She looks like she would faint if she skipped a few meals. Perhaps it's merely an act of bravado. Binaz thoughts, yes, she must be acting tough to save face. Have that woman no shame. She would have apologized for her actions by now. I want to make her starve more, but what if she dies? If the Emperor finds out that I starved his sister to death? Thinking about that, Binaz starts trembling and gets scared. He said, Sigh, what to do? A servant intervenes and said, There's been a disaster, Your Majesty. He in an angry tone asked, What now? The servant replied, A message came from Kesman. Binaz asked, What's the message? The servant holding a letter said the special force that was established all got captured by the enemies and were executed. Listening to this, Binaz gets shocked and shouts, What? The servant bowed and said some of their heads were even put on spikes and displayed on a wall. Binaz starts shivering with anger and said, What? He gets nervous and said, What did I do to deserve this? Even though Arnoa turned me down that night, I managed to spread the rumor that we shared a bed. There should be no reason for Imperial Luciano to hate me. He holding his head thoughts, the families of the knights will want an explanation, and I can't ignore them because they are nobles. I didn't know the Emperor cared about his sister this much. Having the esteemed Imperial Princess as my queen, and keeping Larissa as my lover was the feat to boast of. The servant starts sweating and said, Your Majesty. The lords are waiting in the audience room. Binaz flicked and said, Already? He ordered his servant to free the queen. In his thoughts he said, I thought this marriage would benefit me, but it's holding me back instead. Meanwhile the lord shouts, This is preposterous, Your Majesty. 20 men who were sent from Duran died meaninglessly deaths. The other lord said, How could the Empire treat us this way? A lord in green dress said, Duran has always been a loyal servant to the Empire. The lord in red dress said, What's gotten into the Emperor? The lord in green dress said, We don't deserve such injustice. Binaz sitting in front of them said, I, too, am perplexed by the Emperor's actions. It turns out becoming a brother-in-law of the Emperor was nothing but a shackle. Binaz nibbles and gets nervous. He said, But I am already married to Arnoa. I cannot take it back now. The lord in green dress suggests him a divorce. He was the Larissa's father, Count Stia. He said a divorce should be considered an option. Binaz asked, A divorce? Count Stia replied, Yes, Your Majesty. He said the marital union with the queen is no longer beneficial to Duran. Binaz said, One can't just divorce an imperial princess. His Imperial Majesty would Count Stia standing in front of him interrupts him, and said, I'm sure His Imperial Majesty could be reasoned with. If Your Majesty and the Emperor come to an understanding, and if you persuade the Emperor that the divorce is justified, it could be done. And Your Majesty will no longer have to anger the Emperor by punishing Her Majesty like you are doing now. The other lords listening this nods their heads. Binaz said, But Duran is not able to pay back the dowry the queen brought to our marriage. It was a carriage filled with gold. What do we do about that? Count Stia said, I shall summon all the scholars within Duran to scrutinize the laws, Your Majesty. There must be a way to give back the dowry. He glanced at the red-haired lord and said, In any case, our prime goal now is to protect Your Majesty and Larissa's child. The red-haired lord said, First, let us send a token of fealty to the Empire to demonstrate Your Majesty's loyalty and appease the Emperor. Then we shall seek a way to make the divorce possible. Binaz said, I shall consider your counsel. Biting his nails he thought, yes, there must be a way. There's always a loophole. Changing scenes, we saw a garden. The servants said, "Wow. That is a beautiful dress, Lady Larissa." Larissa was wearing a pink dress and she replied, "Haha, do you think so?" Larissa's mother said, "I told her to wear something that isn't a gift from the king when she's walking in gardens." "But what do you know? All of her dresses are gifts from His Majesty. The king loved her." Larissa, in a very happy mood, said, "Mother, it's nothing to boast about." She said, "His Majesty only gave me 10 dresses?" The servants hearing this gets shocked and shouts, "Wow! Oh, many, so many!" Larissa, touching her red ruby necklace, said, "The dresses are nothing compared to this ruby necklace." The servants said, "That's right, you also go to ruby necklace, His Majesty such a romantic. It's so elegant and shiny. The last time His Majesty even gave you a black diamond. His Majesty really know how to make his lover happy. I want to be as loved as you are one day." Larissa, listening to these words, gets more happy and said, "I have been awaiting this rush. I am loved by the king himself. Admire me, envy me." Meanwhile, Arnoa comes and said, "Larissa?" She said, "Huh?" Arnoa, wearing a black dress, comes in front of her. After seeing her, Larissa gets angry and said, "Your Majesty." Seeing Arnoa, they all bowed and greets her, "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Why, Your Majesty?" Arnoa remained silent and then said, "I see someone has yet to greet me. Did the time you spent outside the palace make you forget the proper court etiquette?" Listening to Arnoa's words, Larissa's mother got angry. She nodded her head in anger and said, "Your Majesty." Arnoa, giving a smile, said to her, How your wrist? You hit yourself quite hard, did you not?" She recalled the moment when Larissa's mother tries to punish her, saying, "But this time, hold steady. I will not play alone." "Arg," Arnoa said to her. "I never thought I would see you scream like a little girl. It must have hurt a lot." Meanwhile, listening her words, Larissa's mother got more angrier. Larissa's mother starts shaking with anger but managed it and said, Thank you for your concern. In fact, I was concerned about Your Majesty as well." Her mother asked Arnoa about his locking up in rooms, saying, "Were you now? I heard Your Majesty was locked away after acting like an untamed horse. 3 days without food or water must have taken a toll on Your Majesty." The girls strats glaring each other. Her mother said with a smile on her face, "Although it must have done wonders for your figure. Lord knows you needed to lose a few pounds." Meanwhile, in her thoughts, she said, "How strange. Isn't she a bit too vibrant for someone who starved for 3 days?" She smiled and played with her hairs and replied, "The king would never do such a cruel thing to me. I have been doing quite well. Especially since Larissa apologized for her rude behavior toward me in the past." Larissa got shocked listening to this and shout, what? She said, "I only apologized because you threatened to shoot me with an arrow. While I was pregnant, might I add." Arnoa, playing with her hairs, said, "Did I? Was only aiming at a boar." Larissa said, "Are you saying I'm a boar? You sure squealed like one." Larissa steps forward and said, "Until now, I've shown you respect because I pitied Your Majesty's situation." Larissa, standing in front of Arnoa, said, "But do not expect such courtesy any longer. I tire of seeing you. Move aside." Arnoa said, "You move aside." Larissa said, "I beg your pardon?" Arnoa said to her, "I was crossing bridge first, and you came along later. Therefore, you should move aside." Larissa, in her thoughts, said, "She really doesn't know her place yet, does she? I am the king's first love and his beloved mistress." She smiled and thought, "So she wants to dance, huh?" Larissa said to Arnoa, "Your Majesty, you're familiar with the black diamond on my silver crown, are you not?" She said, "The king said such a precious jewel belongs on my head and gifted me the crown. A matching set with His Majesty's. In addition, when I complimented His Majesty's wedding ring, His Majesty had it melted and made me these earrings I'm wearing." Arnoa replied, "I remember." Larissa snickered and said, "I'm His Majesty's lover, and you're not." There is nothing you can do to change that. She, placing her hand under her chin, said, Imperial lineage is nothing compared to the king's love. Arnoa replied, Are you sure about that? Larissa tells her, His Majesty even gifted me this ruby necklace today. Arnoa said, I could not care less. Larissa said, Is it not beautiful? Larissa said, Anyway, I can take anything from your Majesty, even though there is little to take from you since you are not blessed with His Majesty's love. Suddenly Arnoa showed her the mystic eye. Larissa, seeing it, said, What's that? Arnoa said, HM? Is this your first time seeing a mystic eye? Larissa gets jealous seeing it. She said in rude tone, I've seen one before. Where did you get your hands on such a thing? Arnoa said, Larissa, there are things in this world that should not be pursued with greed. It's a virtue to know when to step back. Larissa said, seeing that, You must have hidden it in a drawer or somewhere for 2 years. Meanwhile, in her thoughts, she said, I want it. Larissa shamelessly said to Arnoa, I'll move aside if you hand it over. Arnoa thoughts, You're worse than a bore. You're a bandit. Larissa said, I'll end up having it one way or another. So why don't you just give it to me? If you refuse, I might fall into the pond. Arnoa said, Why should I care? Larissa replied, You do know I'm carrying the king's child, don't you? If something were to happen to me, His Majesty would have to punish you. How are you harmed, Larissa? And what would people say? Punching the woman crying her husband's child into the pond. Isn't that what the villainess did in the burning palace? Your Majesty wouldn't want to get divorced like the villains too, would you? I'd hate to make you the villainess who tried to kill me out of jealousy. Arnoa's eyes started sparkling and she said, Larissa, you're a genius. Larissa proudly said, Of course, if you want, I do. Arnoa reaches her and pushing her down said, I hope you know how to swim. Never mind. I actually don't care. Larissa begged her to stop, huh? Hold on, Your Majesty. Arnoa pushed her in pool. She fell into the pool and shouts, Ah! Help! The girls and her mother shouts, Oh my goodness! Larissa! Oh my! Lady Larissa! Guards! Come help her! Seeing this, Arnoa gets happy and laugh at her. In the next scene, we saw Larissa crying while sitting on her bed. She puts her face in pillow and shouts, AAGH. Binus tries to calm her. He said, Calm down, Larissa. She replied, How could I? She pushed me into the pond. Binus sighed and asked, Did she really? Larissa said, Are you doubting me? The mother of Your Majesty's child? Binus replied, Oh, of course not. He, trying to calm her, said, Sorry, it was just hard to believe. He hugs Larissa and said to her, Oh Larissa, you have been through hell. She replied, I have. Luca interrupts them saying, Actually, the pond is not nearly deep enough to drown. If she just stayed calm, she wouldn't have drunk so much of the pond water. Binus gets furious and shout while throwing a stone at Luca, Get out! You useless windbag! He trembled with anger and said, No matter how busy the staff is due to the aftermatch of the Kessman incident, sending that imbecile as my errand boy is unacceptable. He turns back towards Larissa and said, Don't mind him, Larissa. I'm just grateful to the gods that you and our child are unharmed. Larissa said, What if it happens again? The queen tried to kill me many times. And she will try again. She, holding his shoulders, said, Your Majesty, why are you not divorcing her? Are her murder attempts not reason enough to get a divorce? Binus replied, There are 1,000 reasons to divorce her. She enjoyed the company of other men right in front of me, and she even called her king hideous. However, even after consulting with all the legal experts, there was no solution. Forgive me, Your Majesty. Meanwhile, in his thoughts, he said, He was just talk. I'd have him whipped if he wasn't Larissa's father. Binus said, I would have to return all of her dowry if I divorce her. But I already spent most of it. The gold that filled an entire carriage was used on new palace pillars, the gardens, and Larissa's dress and jewelry. He thought, come to think of it, the pond Larissa fell into today was also made with that gold. Larissa mumbled and said, what if she left in some other way? Binaz asked, what other way? Larissa smirks and said, like dying at the hands of people who have had enough of her malicious acts? Meanwhile Belle, fighting with assassins, said, I am sick and tired of Count Estia's lousy assassination attempts. He flicked his hand and said, increasing the number of assassins fivefold won't change a thing, if they're all this sloppy. Arnoa, sitting on bed, said, he would rather send more assassins than divorce me? She sighed and said, I should have brought a smaller dowry. It's not like I had a say anyway. Luciano decided to offer Binaz all the inheritance left to me by Empress Anastia as my dowry. She said, I don't care about the gold. Binaz can keep it if he would just divorce me. But he must believe that if he doesn't return the dowry when he's divorcing the imperial princess, he won't be able to stay on the Emperor's good side. That must be why he wants to maintain the marriage. It's been 27 days since I heard of Luciano's passing from Belle. Binaz will become the emperor if I don't get him to divorce me in 3 days. She bowed her head down and said, I wish I had more time. She said to Belle, I think you won the wager, Belle. Belle got surprised and turns his eyes towards her. She felt on the bed and said, please polish my soul stone as prettily as possible. She said, even if I had more time, he would just hear about Luciano's death from somewhere else. At least if I become a soul stone, I won't have to live as Binaz's queen until I grow old and die. Belle remained silent, and she opened her eye to peek and see him why he is silent. She rolled towards his side and said, I thought you'd be more happy when you won. He replied, I'm not happy at all. Belle waves his hand in air and said, why not? You said you wanted a soul stone. I also said things I want change often. Listening to Belle's words, she rises and said, what do you want now? He glares and said, I want to see you on the throne with a crown on your head. She gets confused and said, what? He turns his head and said, as the master of the enchanted tower, it would be shameful to become the messenger of an emperor even less capable than Luciano. He said, soul stones occasions are rare, but it's not worth going through that kind of a disaster. Ahem, but wagers with non-sorcerers are just a pastime for me. I do not care if I win or lose. She said to him, you want to help me? Belle steps towards her and said, if I could. However, I still won't be able to harm him with magic. He touches her face and said, take his life, or lie to him. Those are the rules until I announce the new emperor. He said to her, do you think there's a way for me to help you? She, with a smile on her face, said, I can think of a few ways. Belle also smiled. In the next scene we saw Belle enters in Binaz's room. Seeing him, Binaz said, what was that? An assassin? Belle comes forward and said, I am the messenger of the empire. Huh? Shocked, Binaz said, what is the messenger doing here? He blinked his eyes and said, oh. He starts laughing and said, did the emperor send you because of what happened with the queen? Binaz said to Belle, tell the emperor that there is nothing to worry about. Even though her behavior is problematic, Duran will honor the marriage between our two kingdoms. I shall never make the queen return to the empire, rather divorcee. Ah, how noble am I! Meanwhile Belle clenched his hand. Belle in anger thoughts, should I just break the contract and RIP this man about? Then he remembered the words Arnoa said to him, imply that the dowry would not be an issue even if he divorces me. And Ludes will do the rest. Belle gets calmed down and said, that is not why I came. He folded his arms and said, here is what I came to tell you. The emperor will not oppose the divorce between the king and queen of Duran. Binaz gets shocked and asked, is that true? He thought, he's here to discuss the terms of the divorce. Belle tell him, the esteem in which this kingdom holds empire has already been demonstrated by your behavior in the past. Binaz replied, what about the dowry? Binaz said, currently Duran is not able to give back all of the dowry. Belle said, the dowry offered by the imperial princess is but a trifle compared to the riches stored in the imperial treasury. It would be unwise to ruin diplomatic relations between our kingdoms over such a trivial matter. Belle inquired, am I understood? Binaz replied, I understand. Belle leaving said, I shall leave the decision to you. And Belle disappears. After Belle leaves his room, Binaz smirked and said, I can end it. I can part ways with that woman, without suffering any consequences at all. Meanwhile, Larissa shouts from his room, what? You misdiagnosed? Lude replied, yes, it's a common mistake. I'm afraid you are not pregnant. Larissa gets shocked and said no. Dr. Lude, leaving to tell Binaz, said, this is important news. I shall tell His Majesty about this at once. Larissa grabs her hand and stops her. She said, don't. If His Majesty finds out about this. My father spends so much of his fortune on hiring assassins that our household is one step away from being seized. If he finds out that thing I'm not pregnant, he will be even more reluctant to get the divorce. Dr. Lude sighed and said, all right, I will give you 3 days to prepare yourself. I cannot hold it off any longer, even if I am let go as a result. Larissa glares at her and said, I have 3 days. After that, things went as I expected. Thinking that he wouldn't have to return the dowry, Binaz told Larissa about the messenger that visited him. And after seeing a chance, Larissa pressured him to get a divorce. The divorce process, which originally should have taken at least 10 days, was shortened to a mere single day due to Larissa's relentless nagging. The story comes back to the day of divorce. Guest was murmuring. Arnoa enters in wearing a white dress and said, look at all these people gathered here to become witnesses. This is the first time I have been treated with respect since I came to Duran. Binaz, picking the divorce papers, see her and said, you came. She bowed in front of him and said, Your Majesty. Binaz shout, kneel, and asked her to kneel in front of him. She kneeled down in front of him without a word. Binaz starts to open the divorce paper and said, listen carefully. He threw that paper on Arnoa's head and said, I, King Binaz Roche of the Duran Kingdom, solemnly decree the dissolution of our marriage. Listening this, Arnoa said in her mind, finally. Binaz said while she was sitting in front of her, Arnoa Salyard Kasian, you are hereby stripped of your title as Queen of Duran. And your presence is no longer welcome in this kingdom. Meanwhile, she in her thoughts said, it's over. Binaz said, you must now return to your home in the capital of Empire. While she holds the papers and said, I finally achieved. She seems to be very happy and said, the freedom I have been longing for. She bowed and said to Binaz, we are divorced. I suppose there is no need to keep a false pretenses any longer. Binaz gets confused and said, what? Arnoa, with a smile on her face, said, I have suffered enough for the past 2 years and I could not be more grateful to you for ending our marriage. Binaz said, does she fail to grasp what's happened to her? Arnoa replied, unfortunately, it appears you are the one who fails to grasp what is happening, Binaz. Binaz thought, how can she be so arrogant now? He said to Arnoa, it seems the shock of the divorce has gotten to your head. But may I remind you, Arnoa flicks her hair and interrupts Binaz, saying, Belle, come out and deliver the Emperor's message to the King of Duran. A blue aura appears and Binaz and Larissa get shocked and said, where is the wind blowing from? What's happening? Belle appears from that aura sliding with wind. Binaz, seeing Belle, gets shocked and asked, huh? What is the Emperor's messenger doing here? Belle replied, did you not hear the new Empress call for me? Binaz said, the new Empress? Belle said, now that Emperor Luciano and Emperor Prince Arian are dead, and you, Binaz Roche Duran, declared the dissolution of your marriage. The empire belongs to none other than Her Imperial Majesty Arnoa Salyard Kasian. Binaz and Larissa both got shocked after listening this and felt down. Binaz said, this can't be. Arnoa said with a smile on her face, now, for my first order as the Empress. I am sure you recall that when I married you, I brought with me a carriage full of gold, as my dowry. Listening to this, both Binaz and Larissa get shocked and closed their mouths. Arnoa, with a smile on her face, said to have it prepared at once.